Hello everyone and welcome to Lesbian Talk episode 4017.
57.
57.
A weird thing just happened on my Twitter.
What?
I'm letting everyone know, breaking as it happens. Well, so, you know how now if you get a notification, a little 1 comes up in the thing? Well, our friend, Cork, just, I retweeted him, so he, replied to me, but it popped up in a separate little window, almost like the Facebook chat, and I was like, what's happening? And I got scared.
I haven't changed my Twitter, it still looks like it should.
Mine does too, but it keeps telling me, don't you want to change to a new one? And I'm like, no, go away, I hate you. I never want to change. It will do it for me, automatically eventually, but I'm holding out.
Same. We have stuff to talk about.
Things and stuff. So how have you been? How's your part of the country?
It's been unusually warm and then it's been unusually rainy.
Yeah.
Unusually rainy. Unusually. You'd have to literally drop a swimming pool on the house every couple of moments in order to make it unusually rainy. It's the UK. It's made of greyness, cold, bad Mexican food, and rain.
It's pretty warm today. It's like 85, and it's going to be 85 for a few days.
There you are being all like, ha ha ha, I live in Pennsylvania, which is not quite warm enough to be the South, but not quite cold enough to be New York.
It gets pretty hot in the summer. It gets unbearably hot in the summer. Well, you witnessed this.
Yes, I did. I also witnessed the enchanting, collapse of the trees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Last summer when the tree...
The traditional rites of spring of Pennsylvania. Will your tree be the lucky one that falls over and tries to crush your house?
Honey, they fall down in the winter, too.
Oh, yes, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, the whole half of the tree fell on the roof. Or, at 4:30 in the morning, we had that super huge ice storm where you didn't have power for, a week. And
you camped inside the house?
I did. It was, 40 degrees. I was, wrapped up in 5 different blankets and, a long-sleeve T-shirt and a hoodie and 2 pairs of pajama pants or trousers and 3 pairs of socks, and then I went to a hotel. I said, fuck this noise, and I'll go to a hotel.
You decided one night pretending to be Jake Gyllenhaal in 2012 was quite enough.
Yeah, well, also it was because, I got a good rate for it, and, I figured, I have no internet here, there's nothing that I can do except shine a flashlight and read a book, but if I went to a hotel, I would have hot water and electricity. I could charge everything. I'd have internet, and I'd be able to watch TV, and I could also go down the street to the Mexican restaurant.
And eventually, if you're in the house by yourself in those conditions, the snow's going to get so bad on the inside that your books are going to start breaking.
Well, I don't think that would have happened. The snow wasn't actually entering the house at the time. It was a really bad ice storm, so, the people down the street, the whole entire tree fell in and, caved in their roof. They had to get a whole new roof.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah. So,
hey,
Pennsylvania, where trees are falling. This is the most interesting podcast ever.
I just thought of a way to bring that back to Dragon Age.
How was that?
I noticed in Dragon Age Origins in the Andraste's Temple in Haven, it's supposed to be snowing on the inside and it's open to the elements, yet somehow people are able to comfortably live in there. They got snow in the corridors, and yet other parts it's perfectly fine. It's
but the parts that they're living are in tunnels, and there's always a fire.
This didn't seem quite accurate to me.
They could close the door.
Possibly.
I mean, that's how people live in the dark ages of Thedas.
They were crazy blood reavers anyway.
Yeah, that's true. They probably had some kind of special ability that kept them in a blood rage all the time.
If I do another playthrough, I am totally going to defile the ashes.
Oh, defile the ashes.
I'm going to defile the ashes, and I'm going to kill everyone in the circle.
Make her preserve you.
No, originally I thought you had to pick up Wynn, and then you could decide to kill everyone if you wanted to at the end, and then you had to fight Wynn.
If you give her certain conversation things, then you'll provoke a fight with her.
Yeah, I did that in one of my playthroughs, but I didn't want to lose the character. But then I found out that it's possible to kill her at the very start and then kill the children. So I was like, excellent, you get to kill the children that you're protecting.
You're a horrible, horrible person.
I want to try this at least once.
Oh my god.
I'm going to totally play like a Braveheart Dalish, with the Dalish tattoos, but I'm going to make them all blue so they look like Mel Gibson. And then make them be a couple with Zevran.
Yeah, but he's like an Uncle Sam kind of elf, He doesn't have any elf rage. Not an Uncle Sam,
Uncle Tom.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I have run out of things to say about Dragon Age right now.
Well, that's good. So, we actually had a word that we remembered last time. And
yeah, it was,
either womanfolk or womankind or something like that.
Which totally...
Just like it fits because we're women, so there you go.
Womanfolk or womankind would be a... Give Big Finish long enough and they will do a Doctor Who adventure called Womanfolk or Womankind. I don't know what it'll be about, but it'll probably feature Colin Baker being exasperated.
Yeah, like he has to cross-dress or something.
He did that in an episode that was The Vanity Box, which was... It was the sequel. It came on the same disc as the... Oh, I forgot the name of it. It was the story with Jean Marsh, and it wasn't very good, but then there was a prequel to it called The Vanity Box, where the Sixth Doctor had to cross-dress. Was
he exasperated?
Yes.
Well, good.
He had to cross-dress in order to use this sort of machine which would make women sort of more attractive and younger and everything, and then had a fight inside the box and stuff. It was like 25 minutes long.
Was he fighting the Daleks? They wanted to cross-dress too?
No, it was this monster. It was this monster that would absorb stuff, and then after it got defeated by the Doctor, it got sent back in time, and then the Wishing Beast, that's what it was. It then went back in time and became the Wishing Beast, which was the story that was right before it, so it was a paradox.
Paradox.
Yep.
It's a paradox. So womankind, we're women, as we are all often told in the comments of our show.
Lesbian Talk.
Damn it, lesbianisms. We're like, so sorry. Why did Doug let you on his site? Oh, please don't hurt us. I'm gonna tell Doug Walker right now. As if, like, that's gonna happen. As if he's gonna, like, email Doug Walker and Doug's gonna be like, what? Lesbians? On my site? How did this happen?
I'm Doug Walker. I am dimly aware of stuff that's going on in other people's shows because I'm really, really busy with doing my own show. And because
as he cameos for you, I think he's kind of aware of that you exist.
Well, if people have seen my Regurgitated Sacrifice review, they've seen some of the lines that he got to say.
Have you? Audience? Dun, dun, dun. I know I have. Yeah. So I saw the snippets.
He talks about how he would enjoy it if everyone took shits in his cock and how he raped everyone's babies, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the stuff that Redacted was saying to Redacted.
Yeah, it's...
You'll have to watch the review to find out.
Yeah, it's not Doug per se, it's President Julius Darien.
President of the Pretend United States.
Yes, that's they split off from the imaginative United States about 3 years ago. There was a big secession war and everything.
I missed that.
Well, yeah, obviously, because it was imagined.
But yeah, so womenfolk. I try to avoid being a woman on the internet as much as possible. I usually pick, gender-neutral names because I don't want to be talking and someone's like, shut up, girl, and I'll be like, oh. Because
you have noticed that women get, on average, about 20 times more abuse than men on the internet.
I mean, it's really easy just to be assumed that you're a guy. Like I know that everyone thinks that Reddit is the devil, and part of it is, but there's good parts of Reddit. So I was on Reddit, and I forget what this thread was about, but I replied to somebody else's comment, and someone was like, dude, things and stuff, and who's being like a total douche. And so I said, first of all, things and stuff, and second of all, it's not a pissing contest. Because if it was, I'd probably lose because being a girl, I just can't quite get the distance when I'm sitting down, which I thought was pretty darn funny. And he's like, oh yeah, you're right, it's not a pissing contest. I was kind of out of line. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that you were a guy. I figure like dude's kind of like both, And I'm like, actually, I use dude for both genders as well.
I see dude as, although I do see it semi as gender neutral, I see it as sort of male side of gender neutral, if that makes sense. It can be used for either, but I tend to connect it more with guys.
I guess. I mean, I sometimes will use guy as gender neutral because you can say, hey, you guys.
Hey, you guys.
Yeah, even if you're talking to a bunch of girls, be like, hey, you guys, things and stuff. Oh my gosh, wow. And they'll be like, I know, right? They'll be like, why did you call us guys? We're not friends.
Can you think of any terms for, that are sort of gender neutral but on the female side? Like a female equivalent?
Not really. I mean, there's like ladies, but that's pretty obvious. Like, hey, lady.
Yeah, it's on one side, and it strikes me that the fact that dude is used so commonly, and guys is used so commonly as a gender neutral thing, that it's all marked up with the idea that man is default and woman is not.
Well, I mean, but who decided that dude was a masculine term? like, when, at what point in the word's etymology was it described as some guy?
Dude started off as a term for males.
Wasn't it like I thought it was like a surfer thing.
I believe it started off from a term for
It was like
males.
the Wild West, like a dude ranch.
I think it
If
started
anybody
off
knows,
like
write the show.
Yeah.
Comment below.
I certainly have never come across any idea that it was originally gender neutral.
Okay, well.
It might have been.
I will call everyone dude. You are all dudes now. Ha 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 ha. Although that's serious shit though, because I always see like some Tumblr kids will be like, my pronouns are about flowers and fairies. Don't call me person, call me flower self. And I'm like, well, I wish you all the luck in the world with that, but I don't see that being all that popular when you're out and about in the world.
I have never come across someone whose pronoun is anything more complicated than Z or E or they or possibly it. I knew a person who preferred it.
Well, see, it's weird because I know that it technically is gender neutral, but I always associate it with a non-living thing, with an object. So to say it when you're talking about somebody, it sounds like it's like depersonalizing them. You know? It's like to bring it back to Dragon Age, that dwarf that you meet in Dusttown who has the caseless child. She's like, my parents call my child it. And I'm like, oh, that's terrible, dehumanizing, or de-dwarfizing.
And then if you've got Shale, you're like, I can totally understand.
I like Shale. But, yeah, well, no, see, because I have seen, well, these are mostly kids on Tumblr, and I say kids because I can't imagine that these people are anything more than like 13 or 14 years old, that are like, I'm a trisexual, demi-homogenic things and stuff, and I'm an otherkin, but I'm a plant otherkin, and my pronouns are petal, self, and petunia. I don't know. And it's hard to decide. I'm like, is this a Poe? Is this a troll just taking the piss? No, I really ask myself, because I'm like, some of this stuff is so crazy. I'm like, this has got to be trolling. It's got to be.
The thing that you just mentioned there, is that mostly made up of you parodying them, or did you come across ones who actually use those exact terms?
No, there are, and I will find a link. I'm not going to right now because I have to restart my computer, because it's got the Windows update, and when it does that, I don't restart it, and I try to use Chrome, well, especially when I have the sound card working. The sound card gets staticky, so I'm not using the internet right now. But yeah, and do searches. Like they're pretty serious about it. Like there's because otherkin have been around for a while. An audience, if you don't know, an otherkin is, I don't know if otherkin are a subsection of furries, or furries are a subsection of otherkin, or they're not related at all. But otherkin are like, well, I don't have a human soul, I have a dragon soul, or, an elf soul. I think otherkin used to be if you were a furry, but it was a mythical or fictional creature, then you were an otherkin, I think.
I think otherkin and furries are like two circles that have a slight overlapping, as in you got the minority of each are in both, or something.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of otherkin furry Venn diagram, but...
Yeah. Well, people considering, I don't...
Well, so that technically a brony could be a ponykin if they wanted to be. So then they would be like the center of the Venn diagram, wouldn't they?
Well, depends if brony is a subsection of furry, which I don't think it is.
No, I'm just being funny. Well, some bronies could consider themselves furries.
Oh yeah, but you don't need to be one to be the other.
No, but you'd have the three circles. So the part in the middle would be if you were a furry who was a brony who considered themselves ponykin, then you'd be in the middle. I don't even know why we're talking about this.
Well, when it comes to
because feminism.
Because when it comes to otherkin, I don't believe in the soul, so I find it ridiculous, but no more ridiculous than anyone else saying that they have a human soul, 'cause as far as I'm concerned, until you've scientifically demonstrated it exists, I maintain the right to find it faintly ridiculous.
You can if you like. I mean, I don't care. I'm not offended.
I'm
offended! Stop the presses, I'm offended!
As I understand it, though, being a human being, until we create artificial intelligence or create, human-animal hybrids, being a human being is entirely a biological thing, or possibly biological plus brainwave activity.
Well, people, even ancient religions, people would have connections with specific animals because they assign qualities to those animals, and they see in the world around them. It's like the beginning of animism.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm just saying that.
If you're offended, write the show.
Being a hard-hearted, what do you call it, naturalist type, materialist type, I don't really see otherkin. As far as I'm concerned, you're a human. You can have connections with things or really like a different thing, and that's perfectly fine. However, I would have to disagree that you have the soul of a dragon. If that is indeed the definition of otherkin, I have not done much research.
Like I said, if we're wrong with the show. But, well, I mean, it just, I don't know. I read this really great article about how we shouldn't be too hard on the Tumblr kids because we were all sorts of crazy when we were that age, but we just didn't have the internet to keep track of it. You know? Like, I remember hearing about furries and otherkin, on LiveJournal. I know there was, always a lot of, drama in their communities and stuff like that, but I don't know. Like, I mean, I have to restrain myself when I read one of those really, really over-the-top Tumblr things, or somebody who's just gone so far social justice warrior that they've come up the other side of crazy. And I wanted to say, back in the day, when I was young, we didn't say that we were tri-quadrulated, demi-modularly sexual of a flower, but also the soul of a, have 15 headmates, but some of them are gay. And, we didn't say that. We just said, I'm weird. We had the one label. It's all we could afford, the one label, and that was weird. God damn it.
Well, when it comes to the otherkin, if your definition you gave is right, and that, I'm perfectly willing to be proved wrong, if someone demonstrates the existence of a soul, and demonstrates the existence of a dragon soul, because if you're going to demonstrate one thing that seems to be mythological right now, then it's okay to demonstrate other ones too, so I'd be fine up to that. But when it comes to, social justice warriors, as you put it, I am extremely broadly in favor of them because it's a bunch of kids who are trying to make the world a better place, and maybe they're doing it in a silly and ham-fisted way, maybe, but they're trying.
That's true, technically, but that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees? I think that applies, and that's okay, this is going to be the controversial episode of Lesbian Talk. That's kind of why I really don't like to associate myself with the label feminist. I don't like to get involved with feminism or anything like that. Like, if something really horrible happens and someone talks about it, I'll retweet them, but I don't want to get involved because the second you say anything about feminism, you're going to get attacked. And someone's like, oh, well, see, that's why you need feminism, because guys attack you when they're misogynistic. And that's true, yeah. But women attack you, too. You're like, oh, this misogynistic thing happened, and I'm really upset about it. And some people are like, oh, no, that's terrible. Oh, it's terrible that happened. And some people are like, oh, you're upset. Well, what about a native woman? I bet she's more upset. Oh, why is your upsetness better? Because you're white. And you're like, well, it's not. It's just, this thing happened to me, so well, it's not all about you. And then other women will be like, oh, well, you're just a patriarchy apologist because you didn't immediately kill this. It's just, you can't win, so I shut up. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And people are like, are you a feminist? You're a lesbian, you must be. I'm like, no, I just want to pay my taxes and play Xbox, and I kind of want to be equal, and I think that'd be really cool, but not if I'm going to get yelled at for it.
Well, I list feminist as anyone who believes that the sexes should be treated equally, should be given the same opportunities.
Yeah, but see, even that's not good enough. And see, that's the thing with social justice. It'll be like, oh, this person's such a bad ally because they used a word wrong, and this is horrible, and they just want cookies for it. And I read stuff like that, and I'm like, first of all, I'm for reals gay. Second of all, I think as I read them, like, tearing apart this person. Second of all, well, what's wrong with wanting cookies? I mean, you know what? Like, a lot of the straight people that I know, I consider, in fact, most of the straight people I know, I would consider quote-unquote straight allies. And they should get cookies, damn it. Because they might live somewhere where it's really not easy to have that worldview. And it's really not easy to stick up, for their gay and lesbian and bisexual and intergender and transgender people. Like, it's not easy, So they should have cookies. Why not? But, like, the social justice warriors, not people who have interest in social justice, like, kind of get really, really locked up in the minutia of policing each other. That I'm like, what change are you making to the world except making people bitchy on Tumblr? No, really.
Well, to be fair, social movements have always had smaller groups that attack each other as part of the main thrust. That's happened since, day one. One of the reasons that social movements take so long to happen, social ones that increase in quality, is because you got so many different groups who are trying to do so many different things, and usually they're spending as much time attacking each other as they do the main part.
Well, see, that's why I don't want to be involved in it. And people are like, but you're actually a lesbian, and you are being oppressed right this second because of marriage laws. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I'm not going to be a bitch about it. I mean, if I tweet something like, oh, I'm gay, and I'm sad because this state's a douche, boom, and then, like, a friend of mine retweets it, I'm not going to jump down their throat saying, why'd you just retweet my tweet? Why didn't you tweet something original that said how outraged you are? Because why attack your friends? Well, you know that they're your friends, you know that they're your allies because they've expressed that. They care about you, and, they care about change.
Well, no. Well, it's not always as cut and dried as you think. Like, for instance, RuPaul's Drag Race this season, they got in trouble because they had a section which was called Female or She-Male.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
And then Parker Malloy on Twitter basically got really annoyed about it. And,
I don't know who Parker Malloy is.
She's a trans person.
Okay, thank you.
Blogger. Wrote about it and got really, really annoyed. And there was a sort of microcosm, which I've noticed. And basically, you had a bunch of gay men who got really, really, really upset because people who were trans were telling them not to say that, not to use the word she-male, not to use the word tranny. They're basically saying, don't use those fucking words, they're dehumanizing their slurs. And the amount of gay men got really, really upset about that, saying, how dare you attack your allies, we're on your side, blah, 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 blah. And the trans people were like, no, you're not on our side because you're deliberately, using terms that upset them.
But do gay men count as allies? Because we're all the same flag.
They were trying to say that they were allies, but they weren't acting like them. But then, of course, you got a week later, you got the same people who were saying that it's how dare they be upset about using slurs, stuff like that. But then, whenever the term, you had things involving people using the F word, they got really upset about that.
Wait, on RuPaul's Drag Race or just in general?
No, it's the same people who were defending RuPaul's Drag Race. And they were saying that basically, almost within the same breath, saying that the slurs that attack smaller groups than them are perfectly fine. However, how dare big groups attack them?
Well, that's the problem. Is like, if someone's attacking someone else, that's bad.
I just mean that sometimes people who are identified as allies for a particular group are not allies of that particular group. They might think they are, but it doesn't matter what they think. If they're not acting like allies, then they're not.
But there's a difference between acting like allies and being a douche. Like, if I said to a friend of mine, hey, you know that tweet that you just sent out? Well, yeah. Well, you really kind of used a slur that's applied to my group, and that kind of makes me feel bad, and why'd you do it? They'll be like, oh, shit, sorry, Omega, I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I'm like, that's cool. Just remember, like, actually, I won't say who, but that has happened when I've been a part of a Skype conversation, and someone used a slur that wasn't even involved with a group that I associate with, and I pinged them in another Skype chat, and I said, why did you say that word? That's a terrible word. Oh, well, it's just the word that I use. I'm like, well, that's horrible. It's an oppressive word. They're like, oh, well, I didn't really think about it. I'm sorry. Are you angry at me? I'm like, no, but, don't use that word. It's not good. And they were like, okay, I'll try not to in the future. And I'm like, that's cool. See, that's a good way, but if they personally like, no, fuck you, how dare you be offended, I would want to, like, reevaluate our friendship and, like, how I thought about them as an ally.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate.
It's all about being a good person, people. If you take but one thing from Lesbian Talk, take this. It's all about being a good person.
It's just at the same time, you've got a bunch of people who are saying that they are allies to whatever group. At the same time as that, they are deliberately trying to maintain a power structure where they can shit on the smaller group while saying that they're an ally.
A good person. I'm not talking about these extreme. Something as extreme as that wouldn't fall under my example from before. That's a pretty extreme thing. But I'm talking about the little teeny bits of minutia that really, in the larger scheme of things, don't matter. And that's my problem with the social justice warriors. Again, not social justice movements.
The social justice warriors, though, they're teenagers, so everything is incredibly heightened.
Oh, that's true. They have that brain problem. That's right.
Well, I'm not saying
in case you didn't know, a lot of the higher parts of your brain don't really finish developing until you get into your very late teens and early 20s, which is why teens have so many chemicals in their brain, which is why, because you didn't get the right pizza topping that you wanted or because so-and-so didn't talk to you today seems like really pretty much the end of the world to you because your brain's telling you that it is, really.
Well, I wouldn't call it a brain problem. It's part of the way human biology, develops. But,
brain problem.
But they have, just remember that even though the issue seems very small to you, it doesn't mean that it seems very small to them. They are getting so upset about it because it's important to them.
I know, but
and you can disagree with.
Out. Like, seriously, man. Like,
well, and this is me just Hagan being devil's advocate, the show, but no social movement has ever achieved anything by chilling the fuck out. None.
That's a good point, but there are ways to do things. And I always use the civil rights movement because it was, first of all, recent, as in it happened in the past 100 years. And it was very successful, for what it was trying to do at that time. And, the people who went and literally got the shit beat out of them, for having sit-ins, for going on marches. I had a professor when I was at Temple for a short time, at Temple University, who was a wealthy child of privilege from New England, he was a Methodist. He was so incensed at what was going on that he and a whole bunch of his friends dropped out of school, and they, got in the one's car, drove down to the South, and became civil rights workers. And they got beat up once, they got arrested, a whole bunch of stuff. But, people like them, all of the African American people who are like, you know what, screw this noise. Things suck, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to take to the streets. And if you won't serve me at this counter, I will sit at this counter until you do, or until I get arrested. That takes actually standing up and doing something brave. And, okay, these kids are teens, so they really can't go out and get arrested or have sit-ins, but there are things that you can do that are, quite honestly, I hate to say it, a little bit more effective than bitching about it on Tumblr.
I will not disagree that people who spend their time complaining about something on the internet, there is a certain degree of masturbation to it, intellectual masturbation.
Yes, I will agree on that.
There's a certain amount of that, but remember, when you're remembering the civil rights struggle there, you're remembering the famous parts that people tend to remember, which you've got the peaceful demonstrations, you have people getting the shit kicked out of them and everything. However, that wasn't the entirety of the civil rights movement. You had a huge coalition of people with different strategies who did different things.
Oh yeah, and I'm aware
and you needed all
again,
of them.
They did different things.
And that included people.
Reblog thing on Tumblr.
But that coalition of people included people who theorized things which probably in retrospect were a bit mental. But
I'm sorry, Reverend King, I can't be at the march this week. Why? What's come up? Are you in trouble? Well, no, you see, I have to blog about it on my live journal.
No, you got people, for instance, one of the parts of the civil rights movement was the people who reacted to being second-class citizens by feeling as though they were superior to their oppressors. This is a common way to react to oppression, and those people, they would have come up with which probably insane theories, such as there are several churches in America which believe that white people are literally the devil, and that every intelligent and important person in history has been black, stuff like that, including William Shakespeare and all. But those sorts of people, they were necessary for the civil rights movement, because if you have a bunch of moderate people who are completely sane, then they're not going to achieve as much as if you got some insane people who are pushing the Overton window further across. Because the Overton window...
I guess, but we're going to have to agree to disagree. You really can't sell me on actual activism versus slacktivism. And I've been guilty of it too. I get an email saying, Hagan has just signed a petition. Do you want to sign this one too? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to click sign, sure. Oh, do you want to sign this one about panda bears? Oh, yeah, I like panda bears, sure. What about this one about educational budgets? Yeah, that sounds good. What about this one about this thing? Nah, that's stupid. I'm not going to sign that one.
Well, I don't see the difference between activism.
Because I'm making a difference.
I don't tend to see much of a difference between activism and slacktivism, because to me that sort of indicates there's a difference between the internet life and the real world, and I don't see one.
Well, sometimes there can be. So there's a legal battle going on in Pennsylvania right now about same-sex marriage. And one of the courthouses that had been the courthouse that had been issuing these licenses against the will of the state was in Montgomery County. So if it came down to it, I could tweet about it. Or if something was going down, I could get up, drive to the Montgomery County courthouse, and I could pick it with a sign if I wanted to. And there's different levels of effort that went into it. And I think at the end of the day, if I came home from standing around and picketing at the Montgomery County Courthouse all day, I'd be like, well, you know, I didn't get much done today, but felt like I actually got out and did something. And, you know, maybe one of those people walking by saw that sign and thought, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe same-sex marriage is okay. But I can't really say the same thing about just retweeting a tweet about it. That's just me.
Well, yeah, possibly because this could be a generational thing, because those kids have grown up in an area where the internet was ubiquitous all their life.
That's
like
true.
We're part of the generation that grew up I first got to use the internet when I was about 8 or 9, and I can only use it an hour at a time and stuff like that, because we had dial-up and it had to be paid for and everything.
Yes, and we had Prodigy. That was our first web server, was Prodigy. Oh, Jesus.
So the way we see the internet is probably different from the way that the quote-unquote Tumblr kids do. They see it as differently, and they're probably going to create a completely different type of activism that we can't really see. And we might be part of the old guard that insults it, but it may well be very effective.
I guess. Well, we're coming up to the half, so I can see your point, although I'm going to still privately think I'm right. Neener.
Well, and that's perfectly fine. But I just want to, reinforce that every single social movement has needed its insane people. Otherwise, the only people sometimes who can get something done in a hopeless situation are the crazy people.
Oh, those crazy people. If you have an opinion on this, one way or the other, if you think I'm right or you think Hagan's right, let us know in the comments, and we'll probably respond to you if the website lets me log in this week.
But under no way if every single person in a social movement is crazy, then it obviously won't work either. You might actually set up a religion that way.
It's like Scientology. Good night, folks.
But what you do need is a couple of ones to basically act like they're like things to add some buoyancy to it, and they sort of just rise it up a little bit. They okay, you got one person saying, "Hey, I'd like to have equal rights," and you got someone else saying, "I want to rule the universe because all you straight people are fucking useless." Then of course the moderate part will be somewhere in the middle.
Smile and just back away.
No, you got the moderate part is suddenly somewhere in the middle.
Well, honey, but you're describing everything in the history of ever. I mean, there's always going to be a lunatic fringe in either direction, and most people will fall somewhere in the middle. That's everything that could be, even with pie.
Yes, I know. But however, the media and people's human nature is to pick the middle part of two extremes. So if a social movement needs to come up with, it needs to have some sort of extreme end, so that the moderate will come somewhere between it.
It will end up being. That's just how it goes.
Wait, because you got some amount of crazy people, but I'm just saying, without those crazy people, the social movement probably would not work. You better watch
it, because there are people who suffer from mental illness who listen to our show. If you say crazy, they'll be like, oh, I never listened to Lesbian Talk again.
I'm not okay, can someone, I apologize if I'm offending anyone. Can anyone think of a term that just means not, can someone come up with a term that does not have medical connections?
I have
because
one.
What is it?
Cattywampus.
Cattywampus,
because I heard Adam Savage say it on Mythbusters.
These cattywampus people.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all I mean. I apologize for causing any trouble. As you can see, my vocabulary...
We're offending everyone this week. Australia, you're next, right after the break. We're going to get to you.
My vocabulary is still evolving. It was only a couple of years ago I forced myself to stop using the R word.
What, restroom?
No, and retard.
Oh. Well, because that was an accepted word for a while, and then everyone was like, this is actually kind of really bad.
Well, vocabulary
evolves.
Yeah. Like, whenever I grew up in Northern Ireland, the version of Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Moe I was taught is the racist version.
Oh, yeah, the dirty one.
I was taught that as a child.
Because you guys didn't know. You Britishers.
No, it's not just a UK thing, it's a Northern Irish thing. Northern Ireland is the whitest part of Western Europe.
That's true.
So
it's true, you guys, there's like no people of color ever.
So they had no idea, and it wasn't until about when I was like age 21, whenever I replayed it in my mind, I realized what it was, because I did not actually realize that was the word I was saying. I thought it was something else, as in, I thought I was saying the word nicker, which would mean like someone who nicks something, which in the UK means someone who steals something.
Like how Dora the Explorer, she has a fox that she fights, and his name is Swiper because he swipes things. He steals things.
I figured it was probably a term for thief that I didn't quite understand, that I had never heard of before.
That's very innocent.
And I played it through my mind, and I was like, no, I was mispronouncing it. Holy shit.
If you guys want a really good story, this is a story that my father-in-law told me when I was over visiting, that he took, I don't know how many of you children was born, but so my brother-in-law to Belfast. They went to Belfast for the day. And, when you're a little kid, you're in the car for more than 10 minutes, and you could be going to Australia for all you know. And so they get out of the car in Belfast, they park the car, and they're walking about, and they see, I don't know if it was both the parents or just the mom, but she was a black woman with her child in a little stroller. And apparently my brother-in-law pointed and said to my father-in-law, "Oh my God, you've taken us to Africa." That's my very favorite story about my brother-in-law. But don't tell him or he'll never talk to us again. But anyway, we really have to go to the break. But when we come back, who are we going to offend next? It might be you.
And we're back, ready to offend yet more people.
We're just offending everyone today. That was also the music of Quicksilver, who probably is not offended. Because he's gay, okay?
He can still be offended if he's gay. I mean, I could use all sorts of terms for him. I could insinuate various, libelous things, but, I won't because he seemed like a nice guy.
You could offend sparkly face. He has the best face makeup when he goes on stage, and if you watch the visual, we have a shot of the cover of the album, and when he met him in person, he was performing. He's this wonderful, brilliant, sparkly face paint. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was like me, like Hagan, but if the white parts were like covered in glitter, and he wore like a black and red cape, but he also wore like a banker's suit underneath it.
It was an experience.
Yeah, and hopefully next time we go to London, we'll run into someone and end up at another random party.
We end up like all the time ever since I married you. Like that's the story of my life, is how I get into these random situations.
Like I was just walking down the street, and then wow, I'm at a party.
We were, but like they had wine there, and it was, I guess, technically free. I didn't see anybody paying, but
yeah, it was a free bar. I asked if you wanted some.
Yeah, we hadn't eaten all day, and I was like, oh, I'd love a glass of wine, but wine like makes me super drunk. Like I don't know what it is. I could drink beer all night. I could drink tequila straight from the bottle, because all those shots that we did back in the day. But and I'll get drunk, yeah, but it'll be all right. But wine, you just like have one glass of wine, you're like, whoa, so drunk, oh, wine.
I can't imagine the thing at the Travelodge would have been any better if you were drunk.
I would have just started crying right there in the lobby. In front of that girl, she'd be like, oh God, the American's gonna explode. I just wanted a chicken wings and the fucking tomatoes, Jesus Christ. She'd be like, oh God, I broke it. I broke the American.
Well, next time I take you to England, hopefully we won't have any surprises like that.
Yeah, we'll find a good takeaway. But anyway, before we offend him, it is the time of the show that we have my little lobster come out and grace us with his wisdom. Giovanni, are you with us today?
Yeah, why, sure I am. Don't worry, I'm not offended. You can pretty much say anything and insult as many mammals as you want, and I won't get offended.
Fucking edible sea insect.
I'm not an insect. I'm a crustacean.
Insect.
No, you're thinking of shrimp. Those are just big edible sea bugs. But they taste really good when you boil them in beer. So anyway, I thought...
Wait. You live under the sea, so how are you able to boil things in beer?
Think about that.
But how do you get the beer under the sea and then not have it dissipate?
Am I in the water right now?
Probably.
No. So it would stand to reason that I have been outside of the water, where water does boil.
Water can boil in the water, but it would just dissipate. I'm confused.
It's best not to worry your pretty little head about it. So, because I wanted to offer...
Giovanni thinks I'm pretty.
Because I wanted to offer the olive branch of peace to you, I thought we'd pick a trivia question about your home.
What, Mars?
No. Did you know Northern Ireland is famous for a lot of things? Explosions, bad theology, zombies, somehow. But did you know it's also the site of the oldest independent department store? It's true. Austin's of Londonderry opened its doors in 1830. It survived 2 world wars, 30 years of terrorism, military, the economic downturns, and not being very good, and it's still alive and kicking. So, what do you have to say about that?
I have to say that if I have been in there, I have not been in there in about 15 years, but it is an impressive building.
I saw the corner of it. We went to that pub that one time.
Yep, it's near the big shops. And they got a big sign saying, celebrating their 100 and something. They have a sign that's out of date, by several years, so it's celebrating an event that happened like 10 years ago.
That's pretty epic.
It's like, yeah, we don't give a shit about time so much. Check it out. We're still able to celebrate this, massively huge thing.
My bookstore was built in 2001. That was like a long time from now.
Derry also has a bar, which is, parts of it date back until 1650.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah, I'd totally drink there. So anyway, my adoring radio public, I am off for another week, but I will see you all again.
So see, he's even being nice to you, honey.
Yeah, he said I was pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So he's obviously fairly cattywampus.
I shouldn't have taught you that word. That was like my special word. Because I heard Adam Savage say it one time.
I'm sure I will forget by next episode.
You probably will, that's true. But anyway, it's time for the other thing that we do regularly that's not the music break or the dictionary, or actually it's just another thing that we do. It's time for One Time at the Store. If you are just listening, this is your first time hearing Lesbian Talk. I have been working for over a decade at a large chain bookstore. I've seen it all, the amazing, the hilarious, the frankly disgusting, and this story is one of those times. Now, this actually just happened this morning. I had another story in mind, but this kind of superseded everything. So, when I go into work on the weekends, early in the morning, usually I'm doing shelving. And it's just basically what it sounds like. Books that aren't on display will be put on big carts and wheeled out to their sections, and then you put them in alphabetical order, and then you wheel the cart away. So I was working on one cart, and this cart stretched for a pretty big area of the store, from, where they have the trade paper comic books like Marvel and DC, all the way through all the different sections of teen. And I discovered this when I was in comic books, and these little discoveries persisted for about the next hour while I was finishing the cart, that apparently last night a young woman, or a young man, I don't judge, had decided to remove their fake nails, their painted fake nails, and sprinkle them liberally throughout the section. And that was awful.
To be fair, whenever you were beginning that sentence, I was worried that it was going to be something else.
No, well, that's, I started telling the story to a coworker who just come in, they were like, oh God, what'd you find? I'm like, oh, they're nails. They're like, ew. I'm like, I know, I'm freaking out, right?
I'm just thinking, because fake nails, I would have thought that would have been one of the nicer things you can possibly find. Because, fake nails, because they break off, people are going to use them quite gingerly. They're not going to, insert them.
Well, no, not the really long ones. Like, when you get the nails done, because I have been with coworkers, like the kind that they glue onto your fingers, and they're there for, 2 or 3 months. Then they have to be removed, and new ones are put on.
I thought...
No, not like the ones you get at the grocery store when you're a little kid. Not like Lee press-on nails. Like, the ones that are kind of like a part of you for a while, and a part of your germs for a while.
Okay, then I misunderstood.
I wanted to vomit all over the place. But I found a lot of people, what they like to do is to take their tea bags out of their tea when they get it in a cafe and leave them on the shelves, and you'll find them hours later all dried and crusty and fossilized. Yeah.
Not good.
And one time, this was when I was in my first store again, I was straightening the teen section, and I found, again, shoved behind a whole bunch of books, this huge wad, about a little bigger than a golf ball, of looked like toilet paper. And my manager came over, and she's like, what's that? Because it was after close. I said, that's someone's tissue. I just found it, behind a book. And as I was gesturing, I lost hold of it, but I still had a piece of it, between two fingers. And we watched as it, rolled down the aisle and unrolled, and in the middle of it was a Godiva chocolate. We sell Godiva sets, the really big, $50, $75 sets. And we couldn't really figure out how this happened. And we checked all of the sets, and we couldn't find one that had been broken into. And the only thing that we could decide was that a child had broken into one of the sets, then hidden the set somewhere that we weren't able to find, but then didn't want to eat the candy or try to smuggle the candy out of the store, however was able to go into the bathroom at least to wrap it up in toilet paper to hide it somewhere at the store. So we just decided it must have been aliens, and we moved on.
I think he's told that story earlier on in Lesbian Talk, but because, the audience, I'm fairly sure not everyone listening now has heard all the episodes, so maybe...
It's new to you.
So don't worry about repeating stories. And
yeah. Well, because Beyond That Guy with the Glasses has got us another 5 viewers. It's new to you. So why don't... we're going to move on to our last topic, and why don't you introduce this, because it was all your fault to begin with.
Okay, this is what we're going to do for the next couple of episodes, unless, this problem that stops us doing it for an episode or so. Inspired by my quick guide to Doctor Who, we're going through the classic Doctors, and I'm making Omega watch a story for a classic Doctor, because, for someone who loves Colin Baker, she hasn't watched a lot of Doctor Who.
I have, like, such a really tough life, and I have things to do.
So I'm making her watch one story from each Doctor, and I'm not telling her if the stories are good or not. I'm not choosing them because they're good or not. I'm choosing them because I think I'll get an entertaining reaction out of her. And today we are starting with William Hartnell and the Gunfighters.
Alright, so this story is a Western.
This was the only Western they did in Classic Who, and it was the only Western the show had ever done in television form until Matt Smith's 7th season.
A Town Called Mercy.
Yeah.
I like that one. But let me just start off by telling you that, as far as I'm concerned, Big Money Rustlers did a better job of conveying the reality of the American West than this episode. In fact, Trigun did a better job of conveying the realities of the American West, and they had spaceships. I'm just saying.
Remember when it was made?
I'm offended. The person who's offended is me this time, because my American culture and heritage is being manhandled or woman-handled by the BBC.
Appropriated.
Yes. Cultural appropriation. Quick, someone tell Tumblr.
Although I'm fairly sure your ancestors moved to America at some point after the Wild West.
Shh. Appropriation.
But remember, obviously the story is not very accurate. But remember, what they're trying to do is evoke the sort of the musicals that were popular in that style of that day.
By using the same one over and over again.
No, I'm thinking like 1960s style westerns, and so they weren't very accurate to begin with, and this is like a television version of them. Plus, they were trying to do a musical. Yes, this is a Doctor Who story that's a musical, but they didn't want to write songs, so they wrote this one song, and they just sort of wrote little variations, which they did.
In the first episode, first 2.5 episodes, it's just the same endlessly repeating verses of this one song, but then they kind of change it up, and then the verses start narrating what's going on, and it's really obnoxious because they'll narrate what you just saw happen like 5 seconds ago. And it's not even an episode break. It's like, oh, well, they need to be reminded from last episode. We just saw this guy get shot. And they're like, you just saw this guy get shot.
With rings on their fingers
stop
and bells on their toes.
I will
the
divorce
girls
you.
come to Tombstone with their high silk
I'm getting the
hose.
divorce lawyer right now. He's right here.
I do love the section of that. I think it's end of episode 1, start of episode 2, whenever the Dodo and Stephen are being forced to play it at gunpoint.
I don't want to do it anymore. And like, that makes all the audience too.
And then by the start of episode 2, they've mentioned that they've played it like 2 more times. So the song actually was sung twice more than we actually saw.
Ugh.
And the episode, it's got the Doctor at his most stupid. It's like he was written like he'd had a head injury.
He reminded me of Mr. Magoo so much in this episode. Like, the framing devices, they've come to just anywhere because the Doctor has a, quote, frightful toothache. And then Stephen's like, well, don't you have painkillers in the TARDIS? And he's like, no. And I'm like, this is one thing that's kind of weird, and it breaks suspension of disbelief that back in the past, the future was as lame as the past is now. You know? Like, how when I was little and I was watching the original Star Trek with my parents, and they were like, oh no, we're counting down to the explosion. But it wasn't a digital clock, it was the kind of clock where the numbers are painted on, it just kind of rolls every minute and stuff. And I was like, wait a second, how come they have that old-time clock that you have in your office, but they don't have a digital clock like we have on the stove and the microwave? And it's the future. And my parents had to explain to me that even though it was supposed to be the future, it was made in our past when technology wasn't as good as we have here. And I'm like, well, that's stupid.
The term is called Zerust.
Oh, I didn't know there was a name for that.
It's basically how the future dates, based on when the thing was made.
Well, we've all learned something new. But I'm like, listen, you can travel through time and space, and you can't find an aspirin. Like,
well, actually, Time Lords aspirin is poisonous to Time Lords.
Okay, well, the equivalent of aspirin.
I can't think of any painkillers that the Doctor's taken on screen. So he might have, but I can't think of any. So it's possible that just human anesthetic tends to be not good for Time Lords anyway.
But even so, I mean, there's nothing in the TARDIS that can.
I agree.
I better go have my tooth pulled in some like horrible, past place, and there's all sorts of infection, and
I agree it's stupid. It is incredibly stupid, but it's not quite Z-Rust. It's more to do with the writer needed any reason to get him to Tombstone, and they're like, okay, Doc Holliday, he was a dentist, let's make him need to go to the dentist. Doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. Ha ha ha, the doctor's an idiot this
But they
time.
didn't even know that that's where they were until they got there. Because they didn't come there on purpose.
Yeah, I was thinking that's the writer's excuse.
Well, he's
got a toothache, he'll go to the nearest dentist. It doesn't matter that anesthetic hasn't been invented yet.
I know, I was thinking about that. I'm like, they weren't even using ether then, because that was like 1890s, I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that if I'm wrong with the show.
The writing, it was, for their setup was incredibly stupid. It made the Doctor into a complete, I think it's possibly the stupidest the character has ever been.
And they didn't, solve anything. They were like, oh my goodness, we're at the OK Corral. What a famous historical place. But they didn't solve any problems. They just kind of bumbled around, and then everything fixed itself as it would have gone down historically. They were like, well, guess who better go? And I'm like...
Although, well, yeah, that's basically what happened in the pure historicals, and there was a reason that they were less popular and therefore phased out, because people were like, okay, that's boring. But you
can have a historical thing where, the Doctor and, folks helped out, and that's why it turned out that way historically.
Well, remember the original concept for the show?
I know, it's educational, I know.
Yeah, they're basically trying, at least on some level, to tell kids what happened at the OK Corral, and having the Doctor being an instrumental part of it that actually changes history and stuff like that. It
wouldn't have to change history. It just his actions would made history be the way that it was supposed to be, but he was involved,
Yeah, but that would kind of indicate that the events would have happened differently if the Doctor wasn't there. So he did change history.
Because eventually in the first series, all you have to do, when the first time this comes up, is one of the companions will be like, but Doctor, won't we change the future and really screw everything up? And he'll be like, no, see, the Time Lords have always used this one theory about time, that things that are likely to happen will happen regardless, because that's the way of the path of least resistance make it sound like something really cool, like Rassilon's fifth theorem or something like that. That's all you have to do.
That's pretty much writing-wise what they would do in later Doctor Who, and they do that in New Who, but in the very early years, the William Hartnell incarnation would pretty much refuse to have anything to do with changing history. He would not let anyone do anything. He would try to not...
I'm sorry, my dear boy. You see, it's the Prime Directive.
Basically, yeah, he would not let anyone do anything like that. That's why he's such a passive character in the story.
Mm.
And that's pretty much what happened in all the pure historicals. I mean, I think it's a nice change of pace. I would like to see that sort of thing tried again. I mean, the pure historicals you had them up until season 4, and then you had the Highlanders, which was the second one with Patrick Troughton. But then there wasn't any of them until Black.
It's Spoonie's favorite.
And then there was the last one. Then they waited 20 odd years, and then with Peter Davison they had Black Orchid, which killed the pure historical because Black Orchid was shit. And the commentary for that, if I can find this part in the review, in the episode, I'm pretty sure it's in Black Orchid. You have a bit in the commentary where Peter Davison starts laughing at the episode and then apologizes to anyone who actually likes the story. But come on, it's terrible.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I actually like that honesty. I cannot wait for New Who to get re-released on Electro Rods or something in about 20 years with honest commentaries by the creators.
Electro Rods.
Because the commentaries right now of New Who are entirely... It's like they've got a bunch of talking points. They're like Fox News, and their entire mission statement is Doctor Who is amazing and everyone's brilliant.
What?
In the commentaries for New Who, they're like it's like by law they have to be positive about everything. I want to get them re-released in 20 years where they're allowed to say what they really think, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people who have disagreements with each other.
That's probably the way.
And I want to hear it, because that would be fascinating. I want to know, does David Tennant really think that The End of Time is brilliant? Come on, David. You're 20 years after it now. You can say what you mean.
He's Scottish, so he'd be like, "It's brilliant," but with a Scottish accent.
Oh, and there's an Easter egg on the Five Doctors DVD where you can listen to David Tennant and Russell T Davies do a commentary for the Five Doctors, the 20th anniversary special.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's amusing. I love the Raston. It's like, look at that, he's killing all the Cybermen. It's brilliant.
Well, I didn't even realize he was Scottish until he was in one of the Big Finish ones, and you were like, "What'd you think?" And I'm like, "Everyone was pretty cool." this one character kind of pissed me off, the little Scottish pissant, head of security. We're like, do you know who voiced him? I was like, no. Who? You're like, David Tennant. I'm like, well, that was a pretty good Scottish accent. You're like, well, he's Scottish, I'm like, well, I didn't, actually. I guess I do now. Sorry, Mr. Tennant. Didn't mean it,
Yeah, the gunfighters is...
And it was like, I really wish that there had been some way for them to just hire American actors, because the American accents were so bad. For like the first 5 minutes, I had no idea what anybody was talking about. And everybody had a mustache, and I was confused.
Yeah, the accents were fucking terrible. But, okay, British TV still to this day has trouble getting American, non-Americans who do decent American accents.
Well, can't you just find an expat who's now works in the UK?
There's not that many of them. And they usually a particular type. The most famous probably American actor who makes his living in the UK, well, there's a few. Mostly it's people who used to be famous in America and sort of came over here, like David Soul and Robert Vaughn have done it. But there's also other American actors who come over here and they do appear in British things, but their accents, it's as though they've lost their American accent, and so they're trying to bring it back for the part.
Well, they're really easy. Have them call a family member and gossip for about an hour, and then go right on set.
I don't know what the reasoning is, but quite often American actors who appear in British things as Americans, their accents are terrible, and I don't know why.
Maybe it's because like they're doing the regular accent, but then like the director says that doesn't sound American enough, and they're like, well, I don't know what to tell you, because that's like for real's accent. Like, yeah, but try harder to be American. Okay, buddy.
Actually, I think that might have precedence. I remember an interview given with some of the Monty Python guys about their bicycle repairman sketch.
It's bicycle repairman. I love that.
I love that too. But they were saying that they wanted to have...
Thanks, bicycle repair. All right, I'm done now.
How they all wanted to have the really, really 1940s fake American accents, so they all grabbed Terry Gilliam and asked him to coach them on the American accents.
Is he American?
Yeah, Terry Gilliam's from Minnesota.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think he's from Minnesota. He's definitely American, and I think he might have actually, though. I think he gave up his American citizenship.
Yeah, that happens a lot, because taxes.
But he said that he tried to coach them in sounding American, but he had been in the UK for so long by that point he'd forgotten how to do an authentically terrible American accent.
Beautiful.
So that's why they watched a bunch of 1940s Max Fleischer Superman cartoons.
I love it. Thanks, bicycle repair. It's my favorite. If you can't tell, I love Monty Python, because when I was a little teeny kid, back in the day, this is another one of those stories. Back before Comedy Central technically existed. I mean, it existed, but it was called the Comedy Network, and really they only had a handful of shows, and most were old reruns of Candid Camera from the 1970s. And for some reason, they got really cheap syndication rights from Monty Python. And, okay, it wasn't entirely uncensored, because there were, actually, no, in the beginning it was, because some of the animations where women were topless, that was not censored. And, I had nothing to do, so, they had Candid Camera, they had Monty Python, and they had a slew of stand-up. And I watched a lot of TV, so when I was a little kid, I accidentally learned comedic timing. It just got imprinted on me just by watching all the stand-up and Monty Python. Sorry, that was a lecture. Continue about Doctor Who.
No, I love Monty Python as well. But the gunfighters. The woman who sang the song, she actually appeared in Doctor Who twice since then.
Oh, really? What did she do?
She was in a Peter Davison one. I think it was Enlightenment. But she also appeared in the Matt Smith one, Closing Time, about the Cybermen and the baby.
Oh, we saw that.
And the power of fucking love.
That was so stupid. It was like, well, thank God, all we needed was the cries of a newborn child to defeat the Cybermen. It's a good thing nobody ever figured this out in the history of ever, including every single race of Cybermen subjugated.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doctor. The power of love compels you.
Yeah, the power of a baby crying undoes the thing. It's like, did you think that's through
so
Stephen Moffat?
Stupid. That is so stupid.
It was so fucking mad.
But, yeah, so, and it was just really funny because, it made me wonder if, back in the day when this was originally airing, children were watching it, they said, Mommy, do Americans really shoot guns like that all the time? Oh, yes, darling, yes, they'd all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be true. Actually, I noticed that they used hell a few times. And I thought to myself, did they get in trouble for saying that before the watershed? Or I guess the watershed didn't exist then.
No, the watershed existed. The watershed is the sort of the rule that there's certain things you can do and say after the time, but you can't say before it, because the assumption is all the children who are too young are in bed before the watershed. I think the watershed is 9, but no, hell is not considered a bleep-worthy swear word over here.
Well, I mean, it isn't here anymore, but it used to be back in the day. So because it was the 60s, I thought maybe it'd be different.
Well, remember British television in the 60s? Remember what I had in the Adam Adamant reviews?
Oh, yeah, that was... People got shot, and there's topless women running around in the papers and everything. There is, you guys. There's newspapers, for some reason, have, like, topless women just, like, around, you know, and they, like, advertise this. And I was like, what if a child would read it? And she said, well, I don't know.
This isn't Adam Adamant. This is it's called the Page 3, and several newspapers in the UK do this, where on the 3rd page of a newspaper you've got a topless woman.
They're like, oh, there's some porn for you for the year.
There's, for the last 4 or 5 years, there's been constant attempts to get rid of it.
But like, you guys are like so stuck up and prudish and everything. How did this happen? I mean,
the UK is prudish compared to the rest of Europe. The UK is positively sex addicted compared to America.
That's a very good point. Well, no, like some kinds of America, because, like, porn sells. And, like, we have really, really racy stuff that goes on. But then a certain segment of the population tries to pretend that doesn't happen, and won't someone think of the children? Wardrobe malfunction.
We have different cultural standards, and though I'm not a fan of Page 3, it's like, I really think that if they're going to keep it going, they should have like I don't know if you have a topless man, because it's not really similar.
He could be showing his butt. I mean, so that's like a butt shot for the ladies, but then there's no full frontal nudity.
Yeah, do that sort of thing. I really think it should be equal.
Page 3 butt shot.
I'm not opposed to people wanting to have nudity with their newspapers.
They wouldn't do that. You know why? Because they would be afraid that gay men would see it and be really happy about that. And they'd be like, the women won't look, but the gay men will. I'm the BNP. Let's kill everyone. They might.
But the main problem is that the newspapers who do it are full of shit. They're
like the
asshole.
Daily Mail?
No, Daily Mail, they have all of their sort of semi-nudity stuff and their hypocrisy when it comes to nudity on their website. They do little bits of, like, semi-naked women and stuff, but nowhere near as obvious as The Sun. The Sun and the Star and Daily Sport and stuff, they don't tend to be very prudish about nudity particularly. But they're just like lowest.
But they wouldn't do, not that they would think that, but like the British people would rise up in rebellion against gay men potentially looking at someone's butt.
Nah, some men probably wouldn't let them do it, but other ones are just like, give me 300 quid. I don't, well, not 300, but give us some money.
Not the models, but like there would be a public outcry.
I doubt it.
You doubt it?
Yeah, it's just the newspapers that have this sort of thing, they are basically lowest common denominator, and they're not made for the most socially progressive or intellectual audience. I mean, people who are those things can and occasionally do read it, but they're not exactly thrilling and intellectual newspapers.
Okay.
So, I think, if anything, the newspaper themselves would be worried that they might lose some of their audience who are like, we like seeing the tits, but don't want to see a guy's ass.
You could have two versions. I guess that would be a lot. But so, final opinions on the Gunslingers, because we're running out of time. We have to do dictionary things.
Okay.
I thought it was crap, but it's charming and old, and gosh darn it, they tried their best. So
I always find it amusing because, well, it predates the Back to the Future 3 idea of the guy, who's in the cowboy times, but he's wearing like a showy version of an outfit, and everyone else thinks it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Because they did the exact same thing.
Well, the thing is that's probably might have been pretty accurate, because you did have a lot of, people coming from the East, from Chicago, from Boston, from New York City, because, especially in the latter part of what we would have called the Wild West era, because they would read these penny dreadfuls. They would read it in the paper that, oh, yeah, it's really easy to strike it rich and, be a big-time gunslinger, and they would go out and buy these expensive, ridiculous costumes. And that's how you could tell somebody who is new to the West.
Yeah. It's like Back to the Future sort of borrowed this idea from Dr. Or maybe not borrowed it, but it's a similar idea. But I find the Gunfighters amusing. Most people don't like it. I'm sort of broadly on the side of amusing it, even though it's very, very boring and pretty shit. But that's partly because I love the double act of Stephen and Dodo. We only had like 4 stories with them, and only like 3 exist.
Yeah, they seem to get along pretty well.
Yeah.
Alright, so, because we've been talking a lot, it's now time for the dictionary. Now, I have the Oxford American Dictionary with me. Pick a page you've not picked before.
234.
I'm pretty sure you have, but let's see.
Well, I hope not. I just looked at Star Trek The Next Generation on DVD, and I looked up Season 2, 3, and 4.
Well, there you go. Hold on. Alright, 1 or 2?
2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out of 14.
7.
2.
This has been guided by me looking at my Next Generation DVDs.
Fastidious. Selecting carefully, choosing only what is good. Easily disgusted, fastidiously, or fastidiousness.
This is like totally description of my show.
We'll probably think of some way to do that. So for this week, I have been the Omega, and who do you want to have been this week?
Roger Delgado, because I don't have an action figure of him yet.
So it was you the entire time?
I don't even have Anthony Ainley. It's very unfair.
It was me, the master. It was me the entire episode. See you next week, everybody.
Bye-bye.